Well, good evening, and thank you for being here tonight. I'm delighted to be in your presence and to have you in mind. I hope your day has been a day of grace, grace you've received, grace you've given. I know for many of us, you're still recovering from Thanksgiving. You give thanks, but now you're giving thanks that Thanksgiving is over. You've resettled yourself. You've washed all the pots and pans, cleaned the stains on the floor you've discovered after the guests left, if you were a host. Or you recovered from all that food you may have eaten, more than you probably planned to. Thank God for all those extra holes in our belts to make sure we can be comfortable after we have consumed with Thanksgiving. However, you may have spent time just by yourself, watching TV, one of those 15,000 channels, or just chilling out, taking a break to give thanks for life itself. I do know that for many people, it is a time to resettle. It's odd because in this time, this season, this holiday season as we are entering into with Thanksgiving, which is very appropriate, we do have a need to respond, resettle ourselves, and then recollect ourselves as we are pushed around by so many images, so many messages that tell us what we should want, what we should be thankful for, what we should do in the presence of other people. There's so many images and impulses and nudges and suggestions and symbols and pictures. It can be a bit overwhelming in some respects, so I hope you were able to just pause. I hope that your gathering, if you were able to gather, that you were able to gather and not be distracted by the fact that your gathering was different. Maybe the particular dish that you would normally have loved to have seen at the table or come out of the oven or be brought through the door by someone you may have invited if that was your situation. If it wasn't there, it may have distracted you a little bit. Maybe even the people that you normally would have been together with as a gathering group of people in Thanksgiving time, maybe the composition changed and that threw you off and distracted you. Maybe where you gather, you don't gather at Big Mama's house or whoever's house anymore because they just can't receive you or they're not there anymore. Maybe even that. The people who gathered with you, the composition changed so that there's not even some people you normally gathered with there. And that's another kind of distraction change. Not because they may not be alive, but because they may not have felt healthy or safe to be in the space. Maybe their health had been compromised. Maybe they just weren't up to it for whatever reason. It could be that the joy of being together was not quite the typical joy you experienced, so you were distracted by the difference in the joy. Maybe it was a different kind of happiness, a different kind of laughter, different kinds of jokes were cracked that normally the funny one didn't show up this time, and stories about his life, her life, you didn't get to hear and regale, and so it was different, and that was distracting. It may have been that, in fact, there has been death, and so the gathering was affected by some tinge or some sentiment of mourning and loss. It's real. You may have gathered and found yourself just ill at ease, just in general. You just couldn't get yourself into the feel of it, the gathering, if you will. And so it was just hard to be there. Although you were there, you were not there, and you were distracted by even your own awareness that you were not feeling it, as they say. For all the reasons that you may not have enjoyed Thanksgiving, we pray and we hold ourselves in this moment to just back up, recognize that COVID is real, it has been real, but by the same token as we have been coveted, stay with me here, we've been coveted, we've been covered by God. For if anywhere you gathered, if just with yourself, me, myself, and I, and if anything you said in that time gave you some appreciation for what you have been given, then you gave thanks and praise the Lord for that. And I pray that those who hosted, that you didn't get yourself so worn out that here you are almost a week out, recollecting yourself several days, of course, after the event. Hopefully those who came told you thank you. And if they didn't, in their absence, because they were just so full and so joyfully exiting your domicile that I'll say thank you for them. But I hope they did. However case, I would just thank you for being here today. And we're going to spend some time looking at this whole challenge of giving and focus on signs of potentially unhealthy giving, because I believe that Thanksgiving, where we give thanks and have seasonal kind of turning ourselves to that moment as a culture, which is a very beautiful thing, there are some elements of our culture that can be too much with us. As Whitman once said in a poem, the world is too much with us. And I want to give you some help, some suggestions, some guidance that could help you hopefully prevent you from engaging in some giving that may be other than what you would really want, and that would bless God and when all is said and done. So stick around, get yourself comfy. We have a little fun tonight with it, and we'll bow for a word of prayer and then proceed forward with the objective of outlining some signs of potentially unhealthy giving. Won't you bow with me? Eternal God, we thank you for all you've done, but specifically for our families, our wives, significant others, husbands, our children, our pets, our neighbors, the strangers that stopped being strange somehow during this time of year. Something happened, and we know their names now. They're no longer just that guy, but now they're Mark, they're Betty, they're Lester, they're Laquan. They have names. We thank you for allowing whatever happened, a bump into, a drop something, standing in line for a period of time, whatever, someone being invited who invited someone else, whatever. However, God, thank you for allowing strange to become familiar. We need that in this world, and we thank you for that gift. We thank you for other gifts that you have given to us through the last few days of health. Just pausing, time to pause and give thanks. Thank you for closing businesses so we couldn't go and spend money and spend time, but rather could be at home, spending time with each other, hopefully. And if we didn't, forgive us for squandering the time for something that could be purchased anytime by anyone, when the gift of shared life is a gift we may have missed. Help us to do better. Tonight, turn our attention to our own selves and ways of giving. First, thank you for the wealth we have, that we may even think about giving out of more than what we have to someone who may not or may be affected in some powerful and enriching way, and hopefully see Christ through us. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, let's get at it. So I said earlier that our goal tonight is to really outline some signs of potentially unhealthy giving. And I was looking at psychology today, and it occurred to me that there are ways in which giving can be easily misunderstood, or we can miss moments. As they say, you miss the moment. You see a picture, I believe, right here. These two boys eating. One is completely consumed and engaged in the process of consuming. And if you look at these pommes frites, these potatoes here, he's got enough to share. But notice how the anglage, if you will, of his arms, he is set in putting into his orifice, in his mouth, the goodness right there in his hands. And in fact, it would be an awkward thing to try to give. Look, he's leaning. There's a commitment of self-centeredness here, and such a stark absence here and here. And the attention is turned toward this individual. And you got to ask yourself this: what was their relationship before these items arrived here in front of the guy here with the blue striped on the top with the yellow? Were they friends? Are they brothers? Were they having fun? Were they playing? Whatever it was, this much we know. At this moment in time, there is a supreme delight and anticipation. Can't tell if he's eaten anything, any bites from that. But clearly here, there's some disdain, some dis-ease. There is more than enough, one would say, and an absence, lack there. This self-centeredness is something we would probably not like to see ourselves in this light, him. We'd rather see ourselves as one, maybe the victim, or someone who's experienced that kind of selfishness. But the fact of the matter is, there's a little both of these in all of us, if we're honest. There's a part of us that feels we've missed out, been left out, been denied. And there's a part of us that feels like him. We have it, we're going to enjoy it. You could take it to the point of justice. You heard of the phrase, justice denied. You could call those the folks who heard a verdict and said, my God, again, there's been lynching with a bullet, a black man, a man and woman of color. Or you could see it as, on this side, those who felt justice that was given to them when the hearing of Obrey, when we heard the hearing of that. Wow, look, justice was served, and we feel a certain sense of satisfaction. These images have power in them because they locate us as a self in a world of others, and there is always an issue of wealth or resources and access. Look here. You notice he's not even ready to receive. His hands are closed. He's resolute that he will not get any, and his hands are open. He is fully receiving. Very, very subtle but powerful nonverbal communications about the nature of access to these resources. Who gave them? Don't know. There's no parent around to do anything about this. They're fully clothed, so they're taken care of in that respect. He looks a little bigger, so there may be that power dynamic. But the point of it is, in this picture, and I'm dissecting it, of course, in this picture, there is clearly a sense of something that is disturbing. That's the point. And I want you to be disturbed because as we look at how it is that opportunities come for us to give, he clearly missed it. I mean, let's face it, given his size, and he maybe have metabolism of a small animal, of course, but he could have broken some off, if you will, to his friend who clearly is there, brother, cousin, whatever it is. They're touching. They're there. They have proximity. They have a history. There's something there. But the starkness of his ignorance of this other individual is so strong. And here's the question. Whatever their relationship was before this moment happened, do you think it's changed now? Do you think he sees him differently? And do you think he even cares? That's the painful part about giving. It has an impact. When we don't give, it has an impact. When there's an expectation of being given to, it has an impact. When we don't care about the needs of others around us, that has an impact. But here's the part I'm most concerned about right now. I know it's easy to look at him and understand victimhood, feeling ignored, diminished, invisible. Ralph Ellison, God bless you. I understand it very well. As a black man with a permanent tan, you probably get it too. You've been ignored. You know what it's like to be dismissed, overlooked. Not going there right now. I'm looking at what has happened to him. What made him turn his head just at the perfect angle so that he can't even see? Well, maybe peripherally, he may catch it, but he can't even really, he's not attending to this individual. But yet he's right there. Something happens to us, if we're not careful, that we can become so consumed by our own ability to have access. I would call this wealth, a resource, access, nutrition in this case, that we forget about the world around us. But even more deeply, we can forget about the world within us. What's happening to us that makes us become this individual? Now you have to do this study with me, you have to become this individual. You have to look at yourself, be willing to look at yourself. I mean, why'd you tune in today, right? You looked in, you tuned in because you want to grow. I want to grow. I have to be challenged, you have to be challenged. We have to be challenged to see ourselves in ways that will allow us to be more honest, more true, and also to grow. And because we know that the Holy Spirit is present, we can take the safety in that presence, that as we see ourselves more honestly, clearly, God always has that view, we are in the safety of a non-judgmental, loving presence. That's where growth happens. When people don't feel that, they don't grow. So don't worry about how you might feel. Go into that. Allow yourself to just stand in this place, be in this place. Look at him. He's giving to himself, not a bad thing, not saying that's wrong. But this picture clearly has a focus on something that is amiss. And since it involves wealth, resources, and access to them, I'm going to focus tonight more on how our giving patterns, looking at the holidays, looking at what we may be doing, looking at how the culture of giving, this is the time where we are challenged to express a generosity, spirit of generosity. we've got to be careful because the world that is asking for us to express generosity is using our symbols, the cross, the Christ, the manger, all the carols, all of the stuff that we appropriated to bring into a joyful culture, symbols that help us connect with the Christ, the event of the birth of Jesus Christ. They've learned how to co-opt that and to use that for sales, to get money out of our pockets. And these are not kids. These are strongly, powerfully, strategically, expertly trained and honed machines of human manipulation, marketing. I don't put anything past them, so we need to be careful. And where I won't be speaking just about giving gifts per se, it will be about giving, so it's going to go kind of broad, so stay with me. Let's start off here. I think that it is really important that we start off with a selflessness, and that's the opposite of the selfishness, the selflessness. Acts 20. Now, I want to say this off the top. This text that you'll see right now is going to push us a little bit, and I'm going to have to kind of step back and do a little cleanup and go forward, but let's read. However, I consider my life worth nothing to me. I consider my life nothing to me. That is a choice. That's the first thing. The attitude of service, of giving, that's God-focused, has to do with a choice that we make. Now, what happens? My only aim, and that is to have if I put this down, I have to put something up, right? You can't just say, I don't want a hamburger standing in a line. I don't want French fries standing in a line. You got to tell the clerk, the cashier, the order taker, what you do want, you see? So, here we have it. So my only aim is to finish the race and complete the task the Lord has given to me. Watch the giving. Very important. Very important. Has given to me. The task. Now notice the article that comes up again. Just being simple, I know. It's finished the race, one. The task, one. The Lord, one source, has given to me the task, reiterating, that's why I have the red there, task of, here it is, of testifying to the one, the good news of God's grace, God's gift. The gift is all in there, right? Really important in that the whole notion of giving, here's where it becomes very, very, very critical. The whole notion of giving is grounded in the nature of God as one who is so full of grace and full of truth, as Christ was identified as when discussed, presented in the Gospels, that it has to come out. That the very nature of God is giving. John 3:16, what does it say? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Where'd the love come from? It came out of God. God had it in God's self. God's love for the whole cosmos, the world, so large in God that he gave his only begotten son, so that whosoever would believe in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. Now, the fullness of God drives giving. And notice the text of it is whoever believes. It's not a believed past tense, one time. It's an ongoing love that gives an ongoing call to believe. And so the very nature of God, to just start off the study properly, the very nature of God is giving that is grounded in love. Now, those are two fundamental things we can't forget. God is this loving force. Can't be optional. There's not something other God can be. And out of that largesse, out of that nature, God gives. That's who God is. Okay? All right. Now, in this case, God gives us a race to complete, and it's the good news of God's grace, which is quite ironic because it means the race was given to us, the good news was given to us, and it was a grace that God gave to us. So see how filthy rich God is, just giving us all these good things. Give you the race, the right race, give you purpose, direction, going to give you the grace that you can celebrate, give you the thing to celebrate out. That's just, even in this text, it's all suffused to that, God's giving. And so it's important that we are able to understand that it focuses on God. Our giving must focus on God. And we must take an attitude that our life cannot be as we have defined it, the thing we go, that is where we get our meaning. That's where we get our purpose, because we already have our life. There's a sense that in the giving process, our lives are extended toward the expression of grace, toward the expression of God. And that if we rest in who and what we have already, which is not to say we are not to say, I accept myself and love myself. That's not the point. It is to say that who we are and what we are is where God is working to express a greater increasing beauty that is God's. We're not fully that. Does not yet appear what we shall be. We will be like him when we see him. We'll be as he is. But we're not there yet. Here's the point. I'm going to push on through this, and it'll trust me, it'll come together. But in this case, there is a certain nature of God's stuff that is in us, his goodness, that wants to be expressed outward. It cannot be contained. And that's where we get this powerful expression called giving. The world sees that, knows that, because that expresses something beautiful in us, right? You think about what people need, you give them. Think about the wealth you have, and you connect wealth with need, and God gets happy with that, because wealth is not to be squandered or kept. It's supposed to be used. You can't take wealth to the grave with you. It's useless. Your heirs will get that. The state will get that. So it's about how things are made in an ecology, in an economy for use, for life to be rich. Okay, I'm going to push on. It'll come. So now I do also want to say this, that this turning outward, and this is, you notice it was getting the gospel out to other people, giving them good news. And I love how one of the deacons in training, I think it was, said that, when we do service, is to make sure that people can see God's love, feel God's love, experience God's love in the place of their need. Beautiful statement. But let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Now, very careful. One thing the Bible does not say when we're given the great commandment is to love the Lord thy God, the next, love the neighbor as yourself. People often see that as love God, love neighbor. You're not really that. The neighbor is more important. No. Also, you have interests that are valuable. You are valuable, but you got to hold the two in place. And that's where the good news comes, in that we get a growing capacity to be able to share out of this richness God has placed in us, which is God's richness. We're able to love ourselves and others, look out for our interests and other interests, because we know that God is looking out for us. Keep going. All right. Now, I'm going to get right at it, because I think it's really important to kind of give you some images. And we'll connect as we go. But I want you to hold in mind the richness of God, how God has made us rich as well, and that out of our richness we give. We've got to be careful how we give, because that is where external energies, external motives begin to shape and move that energy to its benefit, as opposed to giving God the glory. Are you with me? All right. Now, here's one. Unhealthy giving cues. Here's one cue. Signs that show your help and giving fosters dependence, irresponsibility, incompetence, or poor character. Let me see if I can image that for you. Think about the kid. All she has to do is give you talk to the hand. This is a kid, young woman, responding to an adult on the other side. That's what this image is. Not trying to hear that. Look at the face. Very resolute. The hand is in front. It's a kind of clear statement, nonverbal. Don't need to tell you anything. Not trying to hear it. You get it? Now, follow this. This girl has asked her mother for a pair of shoes. These Air Jordan 1 Retro High OG University Blue shoes will run you about $450. This child in the last picture has always been rude to her mother. And she doesn't even play basketball. But yet she wants her mother to buy her these shoes. So this notion of giving that has, in the first cue, if you will, fosters poor character. See, the child will begin to connect the behavior that is disrespectful and unchecked with the gift, and see the gift as a reinforcement of bad behavior. And so the child will begin to connect bad behavior with generous acts. And that is considered in the child's mind, as children, even if they're older, don't always unravel our thinking. And so many parents will say, and I've heard this, it scared me to death when I heard a parent say it. Parent was trying to give a gift to change the character of a child. Wow, dangerous. Never works. Because the child will see again and again that if I engage in bad behavior and I get parties, get expensive things, get things that I want, then clearly there's a formula there. I'm going to work it. I'm going to keep doing bad behavior and keep getting what I want. Why should I change? So the child has in mind, this is called creating a monster, the child has in mind a formula. The parent is trying to figure out and says this, after all that I have given you and you still treat me like this, incensed. The child looks at the parent like, ain't that the game? Isn't that how it works? Children study parents. They study consistency and inconsistency in action. When they see a certain pattern, they learn it, and then they execute it based upon a childish way of thinking. When I was a child, I thought as a child. And if I'm selfish, thinking just about myself, then I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure that I get what I want. I don't care about anyone else. Very important. Watch yourself. Are you engaging in a kind of giving that shows signs? Look for the signs that your help, your giving, fosters dependence. They expect you to get angry at them so they can say, justifies my bad behavior because it justifies, therefore, the gifts I get. You get angry, I get gifts. It's working. Increased irresponsibility. I told you to clean your room, but yet you give me these expensive shoes, which are somewhere in all this mess. Why should I clean them up? I'll ask you to give me another pair. You'll fuss about it, and we'll just keep on rolling. I'll be 4 or 5 pairs deep. It sounds crazy, but you know it's real. Next. This is where it gets a little scary. Parent says, well, I was hoping that if I gave him the thing that he wanted, even though he's been a bad actor, he straightened up. This is the most bogus interpretation of this text. God demonstrates his own love for us, which is in us, for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Parents, aunts, uncles, aunties, don't do it. You see yourself as trying to change behavior by thinking, well, he's acting bad, I'll give him something good. The good will change him. It will not. What it will do is it will reinforce him. And if you think in the mind with some justification that God showed grace to us by giving us his son while we were acting crazily, rejecting God, not loving God, just a little bit of a note. Here's the grammatical expression, we ain't God. Giving shoes, a piece of human-made, oftentimes material, however beautifully crafted, wonderfully marketed, however wonderful it makes the person who receives it feel in the context of their social setting, it's just a shoe that will wear out. It's not a life that gives life. Be careful. You do not misunderstand the nature of your giving as life-giving when you're giving stuff to try to change a behavior. What's needed now is to build character, which cannot be changed by giving stuff. This is so powerful. This changes who we are. John tells us it gives us life. There's nothing we can give that gives life. Nothing. Hold on, Pastor. I gave blood. No, the blood was from somebody already living, but it doesn't give life. If that's the case, you can just go to the morgue and just put your blood in some corpse. It won't work that way. It doesn't give life. The mysterious power to generate life is God and God's own. Our job is to try to shape character and accept the fact that if we have missed the critical developmental stages where we inculcate values, our job is to become a student now of what we must do in repentant behavior and thinking to help someone understand what they may have missed. And know that it will take a lot more, because once the seed grows and the stalk grows and becomes hard and the Tuger pressure begins to stand it up and it builds a hardness around it, you don't just change something. You may try to bend, but you don't. If you're not careful, if you wait too late, you'll break someone. And that's not something we ever would want to do. Now it's time for a different kind of approach. We'll have to come to that later, but I want to get through this because there's some spending you all probably may be planning to do, and I don't want to miss out on my chance to speak a little life to you. How about number 2? You have a distinct impression you're being manipulated into helping or giving. Now, this one is a little scary. I have to give it to you. Some people use anger and bullying to get what they want. So this image of like a puppet master and someone yelling is very real. Do you have angry people in your life? Do you have any angry children who use anger and bullying on you as a parent to make you do what they want you to do? And you're afraid. You walk around them on eggshells because you're scared of setting them off because you don't have to deal with that. Your nerves are frayed. Trust me, it will only get worse. This was once a child. Now it's an adult. And the way they watch, the very same way that they watch other behaviors condition the way you respond to them, that becomes a power dynamic. Be careful. It's time to make some changes. Get help. Because if you don't, you will have an adult yelling at you. But guess what? This adult, if he yells at you as someone who loves and provides for him, imagine how he engages the world. The people who love him are in the house. Those who probably don't are not in the house. And those people, they won't respond the way you do, chances are. They'll tell you next and look past them. They'll say, no, you will not be admitted. They'll say, no, this bad behavior will not be permitted here. They will cuff him. And if he's doing it at the right time, with the right hue, they may shoot him. You know, it's not a small thing. Be very careful when you look at why you're giving to see, are you giving because you want to quiet the demon in the house? Just know that if you give to the demon likes to eat that. The demon will get bigger and continue to eat. And the dynamic of giving to quiet will continue on and on and on until you are exhausted. Demons don't tend to exhaust. They just, as the story says, jump into another body. We'll get to that, but think about it. We'll come to the story in time about Christ and the man that was possessed with a legion, who after Christ exorcised the demons out, they jumped into pigs. Demons need a body. But let's go on. Next. This one's a little spooky too. Unhealthy giving. The help or giving helps someone to stagnate or become stuck in an age-inappropriate stage of development or prevents them from developing needed life or professional skills. Now, let me say it like this. It's cool. A little Laquan, like that name. When Laquan cleans up after himself. That ought to be, I mean, look at him. He made the mess. Those are his toys. He is by himself. He's learned the skill of being able to clean up after himself. So this is good. This is success. And we like this. This is good. What we don't like is for a parent to walk into this and feel some ownership for it. That's not appropriate. If you walk behind your son and clean up this, you're out of line. You're out of line. Because what you find is that he will lack the skills to be able to develop any space management. And so this young man was probably not, he definitely wasn't here. Something happened between this and clearly this. And the question is, was it you? Was it me? Being very honest about it is that, we got to be honest. I mean, if you have to walk into your son or daughter's, if you have to walk like, if that's how way if you open the door and you hope something doesn't fall on you and it's your house, rethink that. It's time to take it back. You see, there's some things there that could be dangerous to step on. It also teaches him that you don't have to be a good steward. Look at that. He may be cool with it, but in our houses, we can't let that happen. We have a window of time to be able to inculcate values, to model them, to encourage them, to reinforce them. And now look at him. See, it's a little funny when you look at it like, my goodness, that's a mess. But it's not funny if you think about the fact that he's looking for his phone that he can't find and a note that he wrote for the interview he has tomorrow that actually happened today. That's what happened there. Missed an interview. His junkiness has cost him employment. So he'll be there for a minute like that. Let's push on. How about this one? Unhealthy giving cue, number 4. Your helpful accommodations make it easier for someone to remain physically unhealthy, put off getting professional help, avoid taking their medication, or working their program. This one may be a little painful, but let me give it to you. Here we have an individual. In this case, it's someone who has been struggling with an addiction. And there's this behavior where a person can find someone who will enable them or codependent with them, which is, you need to use, I need to see you need me. So I begrudgingly give you what you need, even though it's not healthy for you, but it feels some need for me to feel needed, and it feels your need to get your addiction fed. Codependence. Each one gets something out of it, and they need this relationship, symbiotic relationship, to get their needs met, unhealthy needs. And that's how they become, in a very unhealthy way, codependent. But you see, the challenge is that, when you find people in those relationships, what can you do? If you're in one, well, just admit what it is to pause back by the grace of God and see that with God's inspection. You have to ask God to help me see myself more honestly. And many of us, it's hard to do that when we get into relationships that aren't healthy. And you have to watch yourself and ask, do you let people around you, are you living your life with accountability? And I was dating my wife, told my best boys, Reverend Woodson, one of them, and some other cats, just a small circle of people. I told them about her. And they said, well, now you met her online, huh? I said, yeah. She met me online too. Got a little defensive, like, well, you got something to say about that? You messing with my happy, whatever. But they said, one particular brother, Eric, said, man, look, I appreciate, and I'm delighted for you, man, because the way you described her, she sounds like somebody extraordinary. But man, to be honest with you, I really don't want to hear too much more about her until you go see her for yourself. Huh? He said, man, she could be a 2-foot-tall hobbit with 3 heads, for all you know, man. I mean, you just been relating to someone via something. You haven't directly interacted and got confirmation in real time. So right now, man, you're in a fantasy, which is good. You can stay there as long as you want to, but at some point, you've got to go and deal with the reality of this person and make sure that what you're perceiving, you confirm in real time. That was wisdom. Mess with my fantasy, though, The online thing has for us who do this, and that's how a lot of folks are meeting now. Millions of people meet now online, particularly with the COVID, man. It's like doing that gave you access to the whole world. But the wisdom of that was to push through what I was enjoying as a fantasy, a virtuality, to a reality. And it's to risk losing the fantasy and having to, if you will, have to accept the reality and relinquish the fantasy. And many of us prefer the fantasy because it's easier. It just works better. It's more accessible. It's right there. You have to get in the car. You have to go anywhere. It's right there when you want it. Yeah, there it is. Boom. And then when you don't want it, you say, click, gone. And you could make it look like any way you want to make it look. Put filters on it, whatever. Those are kind of ways to make people appear as you want them to by just shutting off the screen or keeping it dim or just putting a picture up that's not yours. All kinds of ways that people are deceived. But the point of it is, when we find ourselves with the Spirit of Christ talking to us, it will be talking to us through other people when we won't listen to it ourselves. And those people will come around, as this individual here is doing, to say, hey, let me be of help to you because I want you to be whole. But, of course, you must want to be whole first. And so the first point, of course, is always initiating your own, and that's a challenge. Sometimes, as in the sermon last Sunday, the friends may have to take us. We have to initiate that. But the key is whenever God gives you those people who are willing to speak into your life, and you've got to have a good 2, 3, or 4, you got to surround yourself with some people who will be able to speak truth to you, pull you from the edge of your own false perceptions of yourself and reality, and help you live in truth. That's what Christ is. He is the Spirit of truth. And so this individual here, as you can see, is having to deal with the fact that something isn't working. But there are people, you see, people who are trying to move with her to the place where working will happen. We don't know what happens in the story. I can't tell you how it ends. All we know is that she's there. You can see there's humility there. There's some pain being recognized, some emotion being expressed. There's a loving embrace of someone. Could be a brother, could be a husband. We don't know. There's someone here with the book open, Could be a pastor, don't know. But they're looking on, and they're there. And we all need to have that. We need to be that for somebody lovingly, unconditionally, unjudgmentally, but also being able to receive that on the other end is where Christ shows up in powerful ways. And so you find throughout the Bible healing. But notice this, in every healing story, it's never just one person by themselves. It's always somebody, if only the other person is Christ. Who are you Christ for? That is the question. Who will you let Christ work through? That is the question. It's hard when we get into unhealthy giving patterns to let other people check us, because many times we try to do it in secret, covertly. And so that kind of clandestine behavior is a way of protecting unhealthy behavior. That's why things done in darkness have to be turned out into light, which is why light cannot, it doesn't flinch with darkness, and darkness can't overcome it. Light is truth. Christ is the light of the world. It's because there must be a force that cannot be co-opted, cannot be diminished, cannot be tricked, cannot be manipulated, cannot be overcome, which has to have its highest purpose must be truth. For some people, they hit that at their bottom. For some people, it's after they hurt enough people, after they hurt themselves. But the key is for us to listen carefully. During the holidays, some of the highest suicide rates occur in the entire year, holidays. People feel with all of the tremendous amount of gathering and connecting and activity and jovial energy and caroling and singing and giving, people also experience tremendous nadirs as they find themselves not able to feel connected in ways that those carolers do to each other, where they become more acutely aware of those that they've lost and have not learned how to cope with the loss, so they enter into that despair deeper, more deeply so. The holidays, for many people, where it is a holy day, holy times, can be like a hole for people to slip into deep, deep places of despair. Keep your eyes out on people who find themselves drinking alone, for example. That's a hole people get into. Just keep your eyes open for where you may be able to stand in someone's place and give them your presence. Give them your presence. Let's push along. Number 5, another unhealthy way. Your help is increasingly unsustainable given your resources. Oh, here we go. Come on, there it is. I know you had your holiday fun at your job. I know you put so much aside every month. I know you did that. But something in your mind told you, oh, I could go ahead and just use this credit card. I haven't used it in quite a while. And this one, too, has got a zero balance. I haven't used that one. I'm going to pay it off. You tell yourself that, but do you have a plan? See, that's the point. Do you have a plan? If you don't have a plan, you are planning for debt. And here's what happens. The sad, sad thing is that after we have spent over our resources, what we have, the gifts we give, which we know, by and large, anything you buy with the credit card, chances are it's going to become broken, faded, outdated. Chances are. But even with the joy of the gift, and hopefully you give joyful gifts, there comes a moment where we see the impact on us. So I was talking earlier about how the one who has all the wealth, be careful. Because in the instance of us giving and not really seeing the impact it will have as a ramification to us financially, we find ourselves regretting the gift. And so, glad you got what you liked. You enjoying that? Because it cost me a grip. And we grimace to ourselves and maybe even tell them that. And that resentment creeps up and creeps out. And it gets misdirected. It shouldn't be the boy or the girl we gave it to. It shouldn't be our niece or nephew. It shouldn't be them. It's us we're really regretting that we didn't keep true to our values, that we allowed ourselves, by some reason that we were not aware of. That's why I want to do this lesson with you, just to pause. Look carefully. Can you really afford what you purchased? And if you use credit, can you pay it off? When the bill comes, can you pay that off? If you can't, really think carefully about that. Because that interest, that ain't no joke. And it doesn't have to be. Maybe it's time to rethink how to live within your means so that you can have less stress and you can give freely without worrying about having to pay for it later and later and later. You don't want to be the one that says, oh, Lord, I'm still paying for that boy's shoes 2 years later, and they've been long gone. Let's go on. After helping or giving to someone, relationship with the person has deteriorated due to bad feelings involving the helping or giving relationship. You know, when you give out and you give something to somebody and it just doesn't feel right, it feels like you're being taken advantage of, and it messes with you. People can do that. If we're not honest about our boundaries and what we can do that's comfortable for us, that really is not on other people. It's for us to say, no, I can't do that, but this is what I can do. When we do that, we set the relationship boundaries and the expectations, we manage those. If we don't, we give the illusion that whatever you want, I got to give you, which is not true. As a consequence, we find ourselves later feeling bad. It's like, man, I gave him money I didn't have. And now I can't do something I thought I'd be able to do. So you forego thinking that that's some great thing. And sometimes we do have to make sacrifices for people that we love. But be careful that you don't sacrifice something that's important and necessary for your livelihood and your well-being and your family for someone else who may think you just have it to give and when you actually don't. It may be time for you to ask the person to consider some other folks, or maybe here, and here. But to give what we don't have, in the end, if we give to the point where it begins to affect us negatively, that can be bad. It can mess the relationship up pretty badly. And you know, when that happens, you know, his brother's getting a call. Look at him. He's looking at his brother calling him, the one he gave something to, and he's like, I don't know if I should take this call or just look at him. But he's really thinking more about himself, how he can't even get sleep, thinking about his sacrifice and how it's affected the quality of his life. Are you giving gifts that cause you to lose sleep? Are you planning to give some gifts that you know you shouldn't give because, well, you may think it's going to make things better. It may make the relationship, it may strain the relationship. That is one way to know that's a signal. Be careful. But sometimes it's about looking at the gifts we give and just having someone to be a thought partner with. Just don't tell everybody all you business. Just someone you can trust and say, you know, I'm a little struggling with this. I want to do this, but I don't know. I'm feeling like it might not be good. It may not be good for my, I don't know. Talk it through. Get your outer nose out. Think it through. The more you talk, the more you'll see, the more clarity you'll get. And with someone who is not judging you, but just can just say, well, let's talk it through. Tell me why. Let me understand. Okay. How do you feel about that? What are the alternatives? So just ask you some questions to make you think about what you're doing when you already know that what you're doing is not what you want to do. That's what it boils down to. But in case of losing sleep, you shouldn't lose your sleep. You need your sleep to be healthy. Now, this one you're going to like, and I mean no offense to anybody who has a dog, anybody who has any animals, but this one, I thought I got to use this one. You find that what you intended as one time a modest offer to help or giving has morphed into an unintended long-term obligation that you resent or find burdensome. All right, stay with me. So, this may be a little funny, and no offense to anybody who owns an animal, but okay, so you pamper your dog, all right? And your dog's like, hey, I'm enjoying a good life. Vida loca, look at this. When I saw this, I thought, you know, this is real. I mean, this dog is chilling. You see this? Got a wrap on. Look at that luxurious backdrop there, the nice clothes. And then look at the hair, the fur. And then you got the cucumbers. And this dog is taking advantage, bringing a friend now. I know it's kind of blurry, but you see there's yet another one. You know it's bad when you give someone something and they bring one of their partners, if you will, in. Hey, could you help my boy out? You know, he hooked me up, hook him up too. Wait a minute, you're taking advantage. It happens. Be careful. Are you one of those people who, when you get invited someplace, you bring a +1 and then tell them that you brought the +1 as you're walking in? It's a spot statement. Put them on the spot, right? You're going to tell them right then and there, hey, I just happened to bring my +1 with me. Is that okay? Like you're going to say, oh, I have a problem with that. Be careful. Don't take advantage of people because their kindness is extended to you. Respect that. In that instance of seeing Fluffy bring Fluffette, that's a wrong move. But some people do that, and it's unfortunate, and it hurts. Be careful. When you're giving and you see that as a way of responding to your giving, that's a note. Be careful, they're taking advantage of you. This one, some of you all may find very real and personal. And so the image that comes next will probably be striking, so I'll give a little context, but here we go. You're willing to overlook the ill effects of your helping and giving because it makes you feel or look like a good person. Now, the picture that you're about to see is of someone who owns a car that has been given for use to someone who regularly does not return it when promised. So here she is, tired, sitting out on a bench, catching public transportation, when the fact of the matter is she's supposed to be going in her own car with her girlfriends out on Friday night just to hang out and blow off some steam. And now she's got to catch the bus. If you find yourself being displaced, put out, having to rearrange your schedule because of some access you've given to someone, to your car, to whatever you have that you need to move your life through normal, if that's happening, that's a clue, that's a cue. That's unhealthy giving. There are ways in which people see us as means to ends, and that's a really problematic view, and there's nothing we can do about the way they see us except we must see ourselves first as worthy and communicate our worthiness to be respected by the boundaries that we create for other people. And so we have to treat people in a way that helps them to understand how to treat us. We can't expect that people who have learned unhealthy behavioral patterns to just be healthy when relating to us. It doesn't work that way. Many people learn very dangerous behavioral patterns and they practice them with reinforcement, be it yelling, manipulation, lying, disrespecting people, taking advantage, and whatever it is. But for us to be able to let people know, hold on a second, you got one time to show up late with my car. After that, that's it. Now, if you say that, then they show up late for the second time. And you say, now, you got one more time. You got, well, no, one more, I mean it. One more time to show up late with my car. Trust and believe. That'll be the last time you use my car. Third time. You got one more time. You're on my last nerve right now, and you're moving close to them, getting louder. They know you just, it's bark, 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 no teeth. You got one more time, and now they're looking at you thinking, do you even believe yourself? Because in their mind, they're thinking, I got as many times as I need. For some reason, there is a way in which we can be afraid to stand in our own place of self-responsibility and health. It's just a choice we have to make. And oftentimes it's because we don't want to make someone else have to respect us, but really it's more about respecting ourselves. And what they will do is, as they see us respect ourselves, they then will take on a mirroring behavior. They may test it and try it, but if we don't bend, what choice do they have? You're not getting the keys to this car again. I mean, you can throw all tantrums you want, flip around, but here's the thing. I'll be gone. I'm getting in my car and go. People start to learn in relationship one to the other. What kind of boundaries are you setting? Are you keeping healthy boundaries? Do you just speak it and teach your children or those around you that your boundaries are just air? Then don't get mad if they treat you like that because you're teaching them that. But I want to encourage you by the spirit of self-love and self-respect for yourself, but also for them. Because by trusting this, that loving yourself teaches others how to love you and also themselves, it gives a model of choice. They may never choose to love themselves. May never. That's not your first thing. Your highest, to use Beryl Fleck and the Fleckstones group sings a song, and it says the highest social act is to bountifully just do your very best in your life for yourself. And watch how that helps other people to find their very best and be their very best. So there's a way in which just be honest and healthy to yourself. It gives others a model of what honest, healthy living looks like. And so by just doing it, it may be hard because it means they have to unlearn behaviors and acquire new ones. That's okay. But what it does is it gives them an option that they don't have in many parts of probably anywhere in their life. You may be the first and only person to say, no, not here. Give an example. It's strange. When my children were little people and they went to school, they came home one day with this new language called I care language. Okay? It was emotional intelligence and learning how to voice, but it was way back, like early 90s. And daughter came home and said to me, I care that when I'm speaking, you stop doing whatever you're doing and listen. Excuse me? Where'd that come from? And she just looked at me. She had learned it at school. And my first thing was, go back to school and unlearn that. But I had to realize that what the child was saying is that I'm going to take a set of values and behaviors I learned in one context and transport them into another and use them there and see if they work. So when I turned and stopped and listened, because I was multitasking, not good at that point, she wanted my undivided attention. She used her voice. I had to respect that. I could have chosen not to, but the point of it was she was saying, I have been trained in another context how to use my voice and express that. I'm going to try, kind of mechanically, but so what? She was learning it. I'm going to test it out in this context. And what I realize is that if someone really gets, in the case of the way we treat them, in our context, a structure, a way we relate, a dynamic, they will take it other places. It may not work any other place, but at least they have a reference point of a way to be healthier. And so what she was teaching me and reinforcing was things I tried to teach her about respecting and being present. Got it, lesson learned, had to get it. But we have to know that that's how it has to work. At some place, if the people we're dealing with don't have that, we've got to be the one to give them an opportunity to become a better or their best self. They may or may not appreciate it, but at least we give them the option because the Christ in us says we can't think about our best interest for ourselves first only. We must also think about what the other needs. Sometimes what the other needs is a point to learn how to respect other people, starting with you, starting with me. So you don't have to be, you think about that old black woman. Hold on, baby. Wait, just a moment. I was on a public transportation on a bus in Georgia, I think it was. I was much younger. I think I was like 18. Some black kids on a bus talking, going toward the back of the bus. And this one girl got on the bus with a bunch of boys, kind of all rowdy, it was summertime, they were talking. And the boys were talking kind of inappropriately. Yeah, kind of profane and whatever. And a young girl was walking behind them. She may have been about, 12, 13-ish. And a black lady was sitting on the bus. As the young lady was walking by, first the boys went on. But she grabbed the young lady and said, young baby, you're so pretty. A pretty young lady ought not use words like that. You ought to use pretty words because that reflects your beauty, your beauty. And so prettiness ought to come out of you because pretty is what you are. And just for a moment, I could see how first she was a little embarrassed because she got caught. The lady reached out and grabbed her, this is back in the day now. But she did that with a maternal strength and a love and an authority that I need to see you right now respond to something I'm giving to you. So I'm going to grab you. And she didn't grab her. She just kind of caught her. And she did it in a very loving way, but the way she did it communicated to the young girl, I'm going to risk you rejecting me, continue to cuss me or cuss or be the way you are. But at least let me give you an option because I owe you that because I have it in me, in my wealth of self and love. It's pouring out to you. Now, those boys are a little more hard-crusted. They kind of got past me too quick. But I'm going to use what I have as a woman to young woman and give you something that could help you become maybe the beautiful person that you are and the way you speak and carry yourself. Your comportment matters to me. And for that moment, you could see the eyes of that girl turn and an embarrassment come on her. She said, no, lift up your head. You're beautiful. You're a pretty girl. Act that way. She let her go. That you be sweet. And that was it. The girl goes in the back and the boys, of course, they tease, but quietly, because they don't want to be grandmothered. They don't be mothered by mama over there, but they kind of tease her a little bit. She looked at them like, shut up. It was cool. The language changed for a moment. And though it may have just been a moment, it doesn't make a difference. See, it's to give a person a reference point. The Christ in us that richly dwells, that richness that I talked about at the very beginning, expresses out. But it impacts the world around us because that's what Christ living richly in us does. It's got to get out. It's a gift, and it's got to be expressed. That is not the life God called us to. And so I'll close out with this, that you would have this mind in yourselves, that when you see yourself with something of wealth, some value, this is Christ counting not equality with God. There's always something that you can hold on to as my privilege, my right, and it's yours. Your right to be silent, your right to let someone be the way they are, whatever. But it does take something to step out of ourselves and give. It has to come out of some wealth, some sense of driving power. And so this emptying is a gifting, going out, and it's taking the form of a servant, thinking about others' needs during Christmas, thinking about others' needs when you think about challenging them or holding off or saying, no, I'm sorry, you can't stay here for 7 months when we promised that 2 was the deal. You've got to give those to people so they can learn how to live. And then, of course, the form of the servant does give you a way of being able to give life to people. And the key is this: we're not to be Christ. I only use this as an example of how there's always something that we hold on to that we can express generosity with, be it our speech, be it boundaries we set, be it our honesty about our limitations, be it calling people to account, be it saying no. Whatever the case of it is, when we give, how we give is very important, that we think about our agency, how we can express God to people who need it. And those gifts that we've been given really are to help the world become more like God. For love generates God's gift, for God to love that he gave. I would close by saying, as you look forward to the way that the holidays will go, be very careful that you really hold in mind that you have a power in your giving. And however you sow, you can expect to reap. And where you generously sow, you can expect to generously reap. And as you give gifts, think about what gives people delight. That's beautiful. Do that. But think about also how you really reflect on what's happening to you and your own witness, your own integrity, your own self, your own well-being. Because if you sacrifice that, you lose the power to really give, because you can give out. And when you lose that, you can get it back, but it takes time. It's better to pause, take stock, be intentional, and focused, and give in healthy ways so you can continue to give and model good giving for others to then replicate also. So look forward to seeing God show up in you, and look forward to giving gifts. I think it's just a beautiful thing that we have as a church, as I said, a culture of giving, that we have a practice of giving, that through your gifts to this church, we're able to have the Harvest Festival, bring the fire department here, bring people from all over the neighborhood here, bring all the folks that were engaged in setting up those giveaways that we had, be they the corn dogs, whatever. The way we've served here as a polling station for folks who voted. We do a lot with the gifts you give, even during COVID. Giving food to the hungry. We have turkey baskets that we're just getting ready to do that next run for the holidays coming up. We also had, before the holidays, we had for Thanksgiving, we gave away food for those who may not have had, asked people here to get them to people who they knew that may not have. It has a lot to do with just who God is in us, who God is in you. And I thank God for that, for the view of that, to participate in that. I thank God for God's presence in this place and where you are right now. As we leave this time together, I hope that you will just pause, look at what you plan to do, look at how God can be blessed through the wealth God has given you and the desire that you've been blessed with to want to be a blessing to somebody else. Just know that this is a beautiful time for you to see Christ show up in more powerful ways in your life. I'm trusting that in mind. Set a goal that you'll have a gift, experience of giving that will be tremendously wonderful, and that you will find yourself seeking to bless people in ways that God will show you, incredible ways. Not just creative gifts, but gifts that will honor God, and not just things, but think about forgiveness. Think about time you could give with people. Think about a card that says, I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about the time we played, whatever. Just think about that. How can you be a blessing to others? Not just giving things, but things that last beyond things. Well, that's it for now. God, thank you for this night and for an opportunity to look at ourselves, maybe laugh a little bit at ourselves, maybe do some repenting about the way we have given. But thanking you, God, for the way you've given to us. You initiated the life No one told you to give. You just chose to love us, even while we were sinners. And you continue to love us. All you ask is that we just continue to believe in you. That's all you ask. Those who believe would have everlasting. We look forward to living with you forever. We thank you for those you've given to us, for the mind to give, for the release of giving, and for the joy of watching you work through us. Continue to bless us so that we can give a blessing to the world that needs it so badly. Amen. Go in peace. Have a good rest of your week. Sunday, peace.